do a cool introduction, Roger. They're all cool.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Third Thing. I'm Roger Hanson, and today I have with me on my panel Mark Edworthy, B, and Otto Excelsior. Tonight we are doing another episode of The Third Thing, and I wanted to go into a little bit more detail on some of the stuff that we were talking about last week with Al Kindi, because we got into a lot of his esoteric stuff, and I hope you guys enjoyed that too, by the way, because this is something that I've really been into. Like, when you hear people talk about the esoterics, a lot of them really don't understand what it, or they don't comprehend what it's really about, you know what I mean? And I think we did a really good job last week at having a conversation about it. But I just wanted to say that and welcome you guys to the show again. So, what's your guys' take? Do you like how last week's show went?
I think it went great.
Yeah.
Your shows always go so well, though, Rog.
Well, I appreciate that. Now, when we left off, we were talking about people like Cleve Baxter and Masaru Emoto, and also I believe we even went into Ian Stevenson as well as Rupert Sheldrake. This all started because we were starting out with Al Kindi and some of the stuff that he was into, and I wanted to kind of bring it up to date to more modern things. And I believe at the end we were just able to finish off on the Schumann resonance. Now, with that being said, I want to backtrack a little bit more, because there's a lot more that's involved with Al Kindi. Now, when you look at Al Kindi, you have to understand that despite his contributions, okay, and they were immense, part of his works attracted a lot of controversy, and that particularly involved his writings on alchemy and astrology. So there is a lot of esoteric beliefs there, which involves alchemy and astrology. Now, Al Kindi believed in the influence of celestial bodies on earthly events, though he did approach these topics with a ritualistic kind of lens, you know. And this is where it goes into one of his treatises that I want to first discuss, and it was called On Rays. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it. Have you ever heard of it before, Otto?
Not as such, although rays seem to be very popular with occultists. So I'm not surprised to hear he was talking about rays. But I'm not really familiar with his work, so this is all new and cool information for me.
Okay, so his treatise On Rays, it proposed that stars and planets emitted rays influencing the physical and spiritual world. Okay, now, just to kind of backtrack so that everybody knows who Al Kindi was, he was a 9th century philosopher, and he was working in the intellectual world of the Abbasid era in the Middle East, and basically he was often called the philosopher of the Arabs. That's how much integrity and how much clout he had among his peers. Okay. Now, his work was actually integrated into Greek philosophy, especially Aristotelian and Neoplatonic thought. And of course, like I said, it was also a part of the Islamic intellectual traditions as well. Now, when I hear people talking about alchemy and when they're talking about the esoterics, and I don't hear them talking about the Islamic traditions when it comes to those subjects, that's when I know like they haven't really delved into these traditions and figured out that a lot of what we call alchemy and what we call astrology and astronomy and the esoterics actually came from the Islamic intellectual traditions. You know what I mean? Because Aristotle, not Aristotle, but Al-Kindi, he was big on, he wrote on mathematics. He wrote on medicine, optics. He also did music theory. He was big on music, which that's what we were just actually having a conversation about. At one point, I wanted to do something concerning Vocaloids, which I personally believe is directly related to Al-Kindi and the way Al-Kindi perceived music, you know, but that's neither here nor say, or here nor there, I guess you could say on it. He was also into the metaphysics and astrology as well. But tonight, what I wanted to do is I wanted to talk about his thesis on rays. Now, he believed that the universe operates through rays, which is radiation-like emanations. It's emitted by all the celestial bodies, is the way he saw it. He believed that stars and planets continuously project invisible forces. Now, these rays, according to him, influenced physical matter, weather, and earthly events. He also believed that it affected the human body. He also believed that it affected human temperament and the soul. Now this isn't metaphoric. He meant it as a real causal mechanism. You know what I'm saying? Like he believed that this was actually taking place. So before we go further, I want to hear what you guys think. Do you think that rays affected the human body, our temperament, and our soul? Like rays, the sun rays, things like that. Like what's your thoughts on that?
Well, this is like literally just Gnosticism told in a slightly different way. And I mean, you have the emanations, right? Mm-hmm. Because the other gods, the lesser gods, aren't described as such as gods. They're not even described as angels, so to speak. They are described as concepts, these emanations. But these emanations also had their own combining and having offshoots. Okay, rays, if you want to think of it like that. An emanation, it's just a product of something else that's already moving. So, and to be that, you're just a part of pretty much everything. The point, waves, quantum physics, it's all there. I mean, we've known this stuff since probably the beginning. How we got the knowledge and why it continues to repeat itself in our traditions. I mean, it had to have been such an important thing, especially when you have these common ideologies that are just global and global at a prehistoric level, and it's makes you think, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Well,
even
see-
the Buddhists know that out of nothing came everything.
I'm glad you said that because the other day we were talking, me and Otto were about intention. Okay. Now,
Yeah.
Al-Kindi, he took this concept beyond the stars. He believed that planets emitted rays, Earth emitted rays, objects emitted rays, and then with humans and them, he believed that they emitted rays, which included emitting rays through intention and speech. Okay. He also believed that the cosmos was a web of interacting radiations. So, in other words, that would be reality is just like a field of interacting forces.
Well, we've all had that situation where we're just sitting, there's nobody around, but you feel like there's somebody watching you, and you turn around and there's someone, 100 meters in a different direction staring directly at you.
Yeah, Sheldrake used to talk about that. Yeah, in an interconnected, universe, the way he describes using morphic resonance, you would expect those sorts of things to happen.
Right.
Since there are these connections. I think maybe his morphogenic fields might be a more up to date version of these rays or emanations. But what's interesting, what struck me was when you said the word emanations, Roger. That's the word that the Kabbalists use to describe how God manifests in the world. So in the Kabbalah, and it's been many, many years, but it starts off, you started with Kether, the crown, and it goes down through a zigzaggy course through this thing they call the Tree of Life. And supposedly the divine energies come down as an emanation. These are divine emanations from the crown down through Chakma and Bina, and I forget all the rest of them, until finally you get down to Malkuth, which is the earth where we are. Although our Malkuth is also the Kether, the crown of a lower universe, which is a kind of an interesting thought. But yeah, according to the Holy Kabbalah, as my limited understanding of it is, that the entire universe is a manifestation of these emanations that ultimately derive from God. So perhaps he was influenced by this, or very likely he influenced the Kabbalistic thinkers about this.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think, despite the claims to the contrary, I don't think the Kabbalah it's like medieval, basically. I don't think there's any Kabbalistic manuscripts from. I don't want to say because I'll be wrong, but for some reason, like the 12th century or 11th century comes to mind. I'd have to look it up, but.
Yeah.
It's fairly modern, so Al-Kindi might very well have been an influence on their thought, these rays and emanations.
Well, and the thing I like about the Kabbalah is, so there are some very influential books that were incorporated that were known to be entirely fictional, as the writings were actually tracked down to some Sephardic Jews in Spain. And the guy who wrote it, his wife, was like, "Yeah, he wrote every word of that. I watched him write it."
Huh. Wow. Wow.
So I love when people bring up the Kabbalah. It's like, at least somebody was willing to say, "Hey, this is fiction."
Right.
One thing I do want to add to about Al-Kindi when it comes to this, when it comes to like astrological mechanisms, he didn't view them as superstition, and this is a nuance, but it's an important one. He didn't see astrology as like magical guesswork. He attempted to naturalize astrology using geometry and optics. So he would say that rays travel in a straight line, which a lot of people back then didn't understand that. Then he would go into saying that the angel of celestial alignment determines strength. Then he would also say configurations produce measurable effects. Things of that nature. He treated astrology as physics during his time. Physics of his time, basically.
Yeah, it was for those guys. That was the most advanced science. It makes sense from their perspective. You look to the heavens. I've gone on before about, you look up in the sky, the star rises at this time every year and the river floods. There must be a connection. The sun is in this house and suddenly it's time to harvest the crops. And it's the same every year. If only we could figure out, it must control everything. That gets back to what Bob was saying earlier about the model thing.
Mhm.
You just have like this little model and then you want to explain everything by it. But when she was talking about maps, my thought was, you've got not only just a map which simplifies things, but you've got different maps for different purposes. You can have a road map which just shows lines and cities, or you can have a topographical map that shows you where the valleys are. You can have a map that shows you where the water is. You can have maps of the ocean's floor, which are very interesting, actually. They never show Atlantis. I always worry about that. But I want to see Atlantis on the map. So, yeah. And I just did look it up. The earliest dating for any Kabbalistic manuscript would be the 5th century. But there was the next latest one is like 11 something. So that's probably where the 12th century stuck into my head. And I'm not sure about that, that dating, 5th century dating, but you never know. So Al-Kindi was what era? What years was he, Roger?
For a quick second.
Oh, sure. What era was Al-Kindi? What centuries?
He was in the 9th century.
Okay, so he actually came later than that earliest Kabbalistic manuscript. So maybe the Kabbalah influenced his thought.
Yeah.
He probably would have, a polymath like him would have had access to all that kind of information if it was around. He would have been, and I think very interested in it too.
Well, the thing about Kabbalah too, when I look at the Kabbalah, I also have to admit that it had to have been influenced by Gnosticism. There's a little bit of it going on there. You know what I mean? So.
Well, yeah, the idea of you've got these archons or other sub-divine beings, and that was, I think, the Kabbalist idea was that creation itself, the earth, Malkuth, was the result of these emanations coming down through this zigzaggy. They actually had a metaphor of a downward descending lightning bolt and an upward coiling serpent, the path of wisdom, because the whole point of the Kabbalist mystic, as I understand it, is to retrace the tree upward and go through all of the different, although I threw all that aside and I just went with the middle pillar, right up the middle, straight mysticism. Never mind all this occult gibberish. I just want to have enlightenment and realization with summum bonum and all that kind of stuff. But the Kabbalah is a very useful metaphor for occultism.
There's so much occult mysticism. That was my reaction too, by the way. It was just too much.
Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, the whole idea of these emanations or rays, and why not coming from the planets and things? I mean, you're trying to establish some sort of a connection because you see the star rises, the river floods every year, the same thing. How does that distant object affect something else? I mean, for those early thinkers, that was a problem. They didn't have gravity or electromagnetics. I mean, yeah, obviously celestial objects influence us. The moon raises a tide in a teacup, But, we were talking about physics earlier. One of the big problems had to do with gravity, because gravity acts with simultaneity. In other words, if you remove the sun, the Earth would immediately, not 9 minutes later or however many light minutes it is from the sun, but you have an immediate effect, faster than light. It's simultaneous, which is simultaneity is not supposed to happen in a Newtonian universe. And of course, Einstein got around that with the idea of warping space and time. Another map, and then like Bob was saying, you have a large sphere representing the sun. You draw a big line around it to show that it's indenting time and space so that space is actually warped, and that's supposed to be what gravity is. So if you remove the sun, the warp disappears instantly. On our level, it's simultaneous, but on that other level, there has to be some sort of a sequence of events. So yeah, for these guys, that star far away, how is it going to affect us? How does it move? How does it, in the oldest days, anything that moved was alive. So obviously, these moving stars were living beings of some sort, and maybe we can talk to them. Maybe they'll tell us what to do.
It got even more interesting with Al-Kindi though, because like I said before, he was also into the whole spiritual and psychological influence when it comes to these rays. Like he believed that celestial rays actually affected temperament and disposition.
Can I suggest something to everyone here?
Yeah.
There's a YouTube series called I believe it's called The Day of the Moon Woke Up, or something like that. It's really good. The moon, yeah. We got astronauts out there, and astronauts are kind of screwing around with the moon. The moon wakes up and becomes sentient, and it attacks the Earth. And there's different. I'm not gonna spoil it for you, but there's series of events that come after that.
I'll look that up. That sounds. I like stuff like that.
You see, that's kind of what we're talking about right there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Exactly what he said right there is exactly what I just mentioned. Like,
yeah, that'd be cool.
I'm gonna try to find a link and put it in the teams.
Yeah, or Rogers Hangout.
Yeah. Now,
or teams.
Well, like when he was talking about the rays too, he actually said that they like predispose individuals towards like certain behaviors. You know what I mean? These rays also influence imagination and emotion. So,
makes sense from his point of view.
They don't really eliminate free will. You know what I mean? They compel rather than than incline. You know what I mean? So it's really interesting when you get into hearing about that. Like, and then he started getting into stuff like speech and magic, and he used to call it. He referred to it as ray manipulation.
Ooh. Okay.
Now, one of the most fascinating parts about this, when it comes to this, is he believed that words and symbols and rituals emitted like structured rays. You know, and that talismans worked because they focused on like celestial rays. So, like we were talking about intention the other night. Okay, he believed that intention with geometry plus timing, it would equal amplified influence. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. That reminds me of the Mars effect. Remember the Mars effect?
No, what is it?
It was again, this was years ago, and my brain is trying to remember something. But basically, as I understood it, they did a statistical study to disprove astrology once and for all. And one of the things they found was that people who were born when Mars was in the sky tended to outperform as athletes, soldiers, basically, you know, men and women who would become overachievers, usually in an athletic field. And they found a statistically significant correlation with the planet Mars being in the sky when they were born. And there was a big to-do about it, and I think there was a book called The Mars Effect. And of course, you know, you pick your journals and you take your ride. Some people were saying, oh no, they had errors, and someone else said, well, it won't stand up to further analysis, and blah, 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 blah. And like most things that science comes up with, it doesn't really fit anywhere. There was something of a tempest in a teacup about it, and then it's just quietly forgotten about, you know, because they can't really do anything with it. But
we have a closer effect to measure, a better metric by closer standards, right? I mean, we have lunatics, right?
Oh yeah, the full moon.
People go crazy with the full moon.
Room, right? Yeah, go to an emergency room on the night of the full moon, or talk to anyone who works in one. Yeah.
Gravity does affect people.
I never really thought about it like all that before, but it's like the way I always thought of it is like it was a way to bridge like philosophy with what we today would call occult science. That's as far as I went with that, you know what I mean? But yeah, it makes sense with what you said, Otto.
Yeah, and it's interesting about the moon. I have noticed patterns in my life that seem connected to the moon. Um, I like to observe things very closely and see if I can see patterns and stuff. And it's nothing earth shaking or anything, but I find that in general, things go better for me under a waning moon than a waxing moon. Not that a waxing moon things go bad for me, but like on a full moon, things can get really intense and take a lot of concentration. And on a new moon, things seem much more relaxed. Now, maybe this is simply a psychological. I mean, obviously, it's subjective to me. It seems to reflect incidents around me, but as a good Buddhist, I know that the mind comes first, and the quality of these incidents are determined by the quality of my mind and the way I frame things, the way I talk to myself about them, and of course, the way I breathe. So, and obviously, if I'm expecting something to be a certain way, I'm more likely to perceive it that way. So I'm aware of all these things, but it is something that before I analyze my thoughts this closely, I did sort of notice that I would have like an amazingly good bit of luck, and then I'd get the almanac out and look, oh, that's the night of the new moon, or I'd have something come up like some, not a disaster, but maybe something where I'm required to do something extra, or something comes up unexpected, or get a flat tire, or I suddenly have to drive somewhere I wasn't expecting to. It's the full moon tonight, isn't it? Or very near to it. I don't know, just something I noticed when I was younger as the years went on. And then, of course, I started looking for it more. But, I don't know, I think, again, they hate anecdotal evidence. No scientist wants to hear about anecdotal stuff. And yet, ultimately, it's all anecdotal. It's an anecdote taking place in a lab, as opposed to, in life. And that was something Sheldrake went on about. I'm sorry, I'm not shutting up, am I? But Rupert Sheldrake was all about we need to do science at home. That's why he said you should only do animal experiments on your pets, because that's the only way to guarantee you'll treat them well. And there's lots of experiments that are non-destructive, like dogs that know when their owners are coming home, or watching cat. When I was a kid, I used to try to communicate telepathically with my cats, and I think it worked. Sometimes they just didn't want. They didn't want to listen to me a lot of the time, though. Because, they're cats.
That's true. Cats never listen. Like they're worse than dogs are. Dogs will poop on your floor, but cats will poop on your floor and then give you a dirty look after they do it.
No, see, and I had this conversation earlier. The thing about dogs, as humans, we train dogs. So when we get cats, no, it's cats that train us.
Yeah.
So
True.
That's why I like cats.
Now there is a connection with all of this. It's a connection to optics that Al-Kindi believed in. He also wrote on vision and light. Now he believes sight works via rays. And there's an echo here of earlier Greeks who believed in the light metaphysics idea, right? So it's nothing new when it comes to Al-Kindi. But he believed that visual perception itself participates in radiation, and that the universe is fundamentally luminous and interactive. So, like with these rays and this radiation, that the universe itself interacted with each other. You know what I mean? It had a consciousness, basically, like we were talking before. And I found that kind of interesting, because a lot of people, I know we've had conversation about consciousness. Do you think that it's localized, or do you think that we're like an antenna where we receive and we transmit consciousness? And that's really what stuck out to me mostly about Al-Kindi, where he kind of brings it to light, where he believes that the that the cosmos is interacting, or the universe is interacting because of these rays, you know. So that was one thing that really stuck out to me, and it gets into the metaphysics rather than the physics part of anything, but I think it has a deeper metaphysical implication, though, is what I'm saying. Like the cosmos is unified through radiation, and that nothing exists in isolation from one another. You know, and that kind of goes into what we were talking about the other day too, Otto, when it comes to, you know, people not being isolated. Like we're connected. You know what I mean? It's not.
Yeah. Dependent origination. Everything is connected to everything else all the time. And it's, I mean, they have like a chain that they even make a wheel. My friend Panibasa made a sort of a three-dimensional polygonal figure made out of pop sticks, like ice cream sticks, and string, to show how everything interconnects with everything else. It's like a 3D model of the idea. So this and in a universe where we're all so intimately connected, you would expect things like precognition, mental telepathy, knowing when someone's looking at you, dogs knowing when their owners are coming home. And these are things that we've all experienced at one time or another. Oh, the devil of anecdotal evidence. But, you know, when most humans have experienced most of these things over most of human history, I don't think it's unfair to say that something is happening.
Right. So I believe that everything influences everything through emanation. You know what I mean? And like when you look at what's being discussed here, this would be like pre-modern field theory. You know, if you really look at it, I mean, because this does resemble field theory, in my opinion, at least. So, and then you take a look at how much this stuff influenced Middle Age or the medieval thought. Like this stuff got translated into Latin, and then it also influenced like medieval European natural philosophy. When it comes to occult science, especially when you start looking at the Renaissance occult sciences, you can see a lot of this stuff bleeding into it. And then when we've even had conversations about later magical and astrological traditions, like we were talking about the OTO the other day.
Oh yeah.
You know, that right there, especially when it comes to light and it comes to rays, that's the one thing that really sticks out to me, because a lot of people who got into the cult followings back then, during the time of Aleister Crowley especially, they were really big on Hyperborea, you know. And when you take a look at Hyperborea and their philosophy about Apollo, and Hyperboreal being the never-ending sun, you know what I mean? It really gets into some interesting stuff there. So you can see the influence there.
It's very, very interesting how these manuscripts, these writings, they didn't have printing presses back then, of like, Aristotle and these other Greek thinkers were preserved, studied by, obviously the intellectual class of their country there in the Levant and the Near and Middle East, and then digested, talked about, considered, written out. And every time you take an ancient book and a modern thinker looks at it, he's going to be translating it in ways that moderns can access a little better, and then it goes back to Europe. and it's like a wonderful game of intellectual badminton. In a sense, here's an idea, pop it over the net. Hey, well, what about this ramification? Pop it back over the net. Hey, what about this? Pop it back over the net. That's where things get exciting, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I really like the whole idea of how it kind of like blurs science, philosophy, and metaphysics. You know what I'm saying? It just goes in there and it blurs all of it. And then they start suggesting that there's like a interconnected I don't know how you, like, the universe is interconnected and energetic,
Right.
That's the thing that I find interesting, because like I think that's what people need. They need to have that kind of excitement. Like, I would have never gotten really fully interested in history if it wasn't for people who talking about like freaking what's his face? I keep forgetting his name. I can't believe it. He's the one that started talking about the Anunnaki. Oh God.
Oh.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
The old Jewish guy.
Oh.
V, you know
Zechariah Sitchin? Zechariah
yes.
Sitchin? Yeah.
Thank you. Zechariah. If it wasn't for Zechariah Sitchin, I wouldn't have gotten as much into ancient history as what I have recently. I was always good with history, but I loved history, but I never got into it like I did until after I started hearing about the stuff Zechariah Sitchin has or came out with. It got me excited about it. I may not feel the same way as what I did when I first heard his stuff.
Right, yeah.
But it got me to where I'm at now, you know what I mean? So I think that's exactly what this kind of stuff does. It develops freaking ideas about fields and radiation and unseen forces and stuff of that nature. So that's my whole take on it. V's been really, really quiet. I think he fell asleep.
Oh.
No, this is just sort of I don't know. you want to talk quantum mechanics on this stuff? I mean, we can get a little deeper if you want to.
Go for it.
I do study quantum physics.
Break out with it. That's what this is all about, man. If there's stuff that crossed your mind that you want to say when it comes to this, do it.
Well, I mean, that's E equals MC squared plus relativity. What more is there? Yeah, emanations, we all emanate. And that's kind of one of my early theories. During my grunge, my teenage angst days, I came up with this ideology. There's nothing in the world but consumption and defecation.
We are food tubes.
There's nothing else. There's nothing else I could see. Yeah. I had my black pill days before I had my red pill days.
Well, the Buddha said when he looked at his past lives, and he had the enlightenment. One of the stages of enlightenment was he looked back at his past lives and he saw all his past lives, universe after universe. He saw it was the same thing every time. The things he cared about was his name, his personal appearance, his food. Then you die. So it's basically who you are, what you look like, what you get to eat, and then you die again and again and again.
Well, I mean, it's not even that complex. It's just in order for you to exist, you have to consume. In order for you to continue to exist, you have to defecate.
Well, the defecation part usually goes without saying, but that is the central tenet of Buddhism. All creatures feed. And when they talk about, craving and clinging, because we suffer because we cling to things. That clinging is feeding. We feed on things. We feed not just on physical food, but we feed on our thoughts about ourselves. We feed on our friends.
You can't take out the defecation, because some of us get defecated on. Some of us deal with too much defecation, and some of us just don't give a defecation.
Well, the Buddha does talk about defecation. I should I should have known the kind of suttas that would catch your eye. But there's a chant that goes on about all the different bits of the body, and they talk about not just the intestines, but the contents of your intestines. I remember hearing a Dhamma talk by a Buddhist monk where he talked about the idea that today's dumplings are always better than yesterday's dumplings. And he said he lived in this place, and near this guy would go by selling dumplings. He'd say, "Today, buy our dumplings. They're the best dumplings. Today's dumplings are better than yesterday's dumplings." And then he thought about it, and he said, "Well, think about where yesterday's dumplings are. They're either in your lower intestine or they're in the cesspit right now. So obviously today's dumplings are better than yesterday's dumplings."
You two are the perfect example of where I'm going with this. See, you're too busy talking about emanation, and you should be discussing causation. See,
well, that's exactly what I was talking about.
No, that was emanation. Everything you just discussed was all about emanation.
You crave a dumpling, you cling to the idea of a dumpling, and yet by the next day you don't want that dumpling anymore.
Well, that's causation.
You can't give it back to anyone. Here, I'll share my dumpling with you. I'm done with it.
Well, the last part is causation. I gotta admit that is.
And you enter something in. There's a change, and then something else comes out.
That's right.
Transubstantiation. Oh.
Now, with Al-Kindi, what I wanted to also go back and point out is like a lot of his critics often labeled him as esoteric, or his work as being esoteric or heretical. They accused him of blending Greek paganism with Islamic thought. Now, all through the time he defended his ideas, and he asserted that they aligned with all of the natural laws created by God during his time period. And you got to remember that he came from a time period where Islamicism was very, very strict, especially when it came to science. Now, his association with subjects like astronomy and alchemy, that sometimes alienated him from the rest of the Orthodox scholars of his time, which was usually through what they called the House of Wisdom. Eventually, he ended up losing his... He was no longer allowed to participate in the House of Wisdom, which was a very prestigious organization to work through during that time period where he was at. But even though he was no longer able to associate with them, a lot of Arab scholars still used his work as references in order to further their research. You know what I mean? So he was very influential in that aspect. Now, with that being said, him being mentioned that way, and what we discussed last week with Stevenson and people that whole subject that we had, I wanted to point out some things that are a bit more modern. This is where I wanted to start talking about dark matter. Okay, especially when it comes to Al-Kindi. And the thing that really sticks out to me is waves that are in dark matter. You guys know much about dark matter and the research that's gone into that?
Not much.
Yeah, a bit.
You want to say a little bit before I get started, or you want me to?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so dark matter itself is basically it's unseen. Okay, now the idea of waves in dark matter comes from several serious theoretical models that are trying to explain what this invisible substance actually is. So dark matter is, first of all, invisible. It emit, absorb, or reflect light whatsoever. Um, Detectionable only through gravity. That's the only way that it's able to be seen, is through gravity. Now, supposedly it makes up 85% of all matter in the universe. Okay, now this is necessary to explain galaxy rotational curves, gravitational lensing, and large scale structures. The standard model calls it cold dark matter, which is CDM, meaning slow moving particle like matter. But not all physicists are satisfied with that. Now, first, the reason why I bring that up is this: it's wave-like dark matter, which is referred to sometimes as ultralight scalar fields. Now, there is one major alternative idea, and this is the fact that dark matter might not behave like individual particles do. It might behave like a coherent quantum wave. And this model, if you guys are interested, is often called wave dark matter or fuzzy dark matter. I think there's a few other ones. I know ultra scalar field dark matter is one of them that I use. Have you guys heard of any of that?
Well, so I think I brought this up before. So there's supposedly 9 different dimensions or physical dimensional traits. Some are temporal, some are physical. So, like, ours is 4 dimensions, right? You got the space, you got the height, width, depth, and a time vector, a temporal vector. That makes it 4. So we don't know how another universe could have come into existence. Their universe could have fractured in a different way through their Big Bang, and theirs could have, 6-dimensional spaces, or just only, 2. So I think we kind of got lucky with our physics the way we are, because it could be worse. But then again, I kind of think we're low on the totem pole as far as actual existing dimensions. There could be just beings just so far beyond our perception. It's just insane. But they would be normal in those other dimensions. So it just all depends. You watch Star Trek, right? Like Q, the guy who likes to pop in and screw at Picard.
Yeah.
Like that.
That's actually a good example because, like, with like these powers that Q has, like this would be something that would be just like a kindergartner, not even a kindergartner, like a baby learning how to walk who was on that level, on that dimension, basically, is what you're saying, right?
Essentially, yeah.
Because like dark matter particles, they're incredibly light. They're billions of times lighter than neutrinos are. Okay, so because they're so light, their quantum wavelength becomes enormous, and that's where I was talking about with Bob Dub, where they're galaxy sized. Okay, so you have this wavelength that's just the size of an entire freaking galaxy.
Well, I mean, if you think of, like, in mathematics, you have a line that starts with a point, or you have the infinite line. So it's kind of like that when you think of it.
I kind of like think of it like instead of clumps, you get like an interference patterns. You get interference patterns basically instead of having clumps. Because like when it comes to, well, in this context, okay, like dark matter behaves like a quantum field. You know what I mean? Its density fluctuates like a standing wave.
It could very well be something that, again, is created an opposite phase of us. Because, that's what, when people talk about the antimatter and matter colliding and how terrible it would be and things like that, I think it's kind of the opposite. You will get a cancellation because it's how to cancel a signal, right? You produce the same signal, opposite phase.
Oh,
and
yeah.
they cancel each other out.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's a counterpart of particles to our very own that we can't see, that is what this other thing is. This is the X dimension, okay? or no, what is it? The Phantom Zone, right? Is that where the Superman would put all his supervillains that he couldn't kill?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we have some version of that even. Yeah. So and you saw how it symbolized, it was just like a mirror, but it was really an entire different universe.
Well, I mean,
Alice Wonderland.
How I kind of see it, it's a little bit different. It's kind of like okay, you know how galaxies form. Okay, they form within wave peaks. Okay,
Yes.
now think of it less like sand and more like a vast ocean of probability. You know what I'm saying? Where the waves crest and gravity wells deepen.
And the intersection. So you're talking the virtual particles that come into existence, and then they fade out of existence once these intersecting waves and lattices come together in this background radiation.
Yeah, basically, that would be the best way of saying it. Because these wave crests, you know what I mean? That and it's like gravity. It just deepens. It doesn't like. It's really hard to explain, to be honest with you.
Well, you have critical points where you can actually pinpoint vectors,
Mm-hmm.
and it creates sort of like a static image, right? Which is why they're calling it, static of our universe. Like the microwave radiation, for example, could be seen as a sort of an example of that.
Right.
So, yeah.
Exactly. Like where the waves crest, the gravity wells, they deepen up. You know what I mean? It's
Well,
really,
you have flux. This is what you would consider a flux.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Now, a lot of the scientists, they consider this standard cold dark matter. That's how they usually they do it. They think that standard cold dark matter predicts very dense galactic centers, which is usually they call them cusps, CUSPs, PS, and like many satellite galaxies, for example. That would be the best way of saying it. Like they'd be like like satellite galaxies. You've heard of them, like say we have our galaxy and there's a smaller one that's connected next to it.
All right.
Now they've started discovering those, and that's kind of why scientists are considering this because of what they refer to as standard cold dark matter, and what it's predicting. Out of that, that's how we're getting these satellite galaxies that are really close to a bigger galaxy, but they're not like they're a distinct full galaxy like ours is.
Well, the size of the galaxy depends on the black hole that's in the center of that galaxy, and if it's dormant, or if it's if it's a big eater, or if it's not a big eater,
or if it exists. I'm skeptical about black holes. I am.
I'm very sure of that.
Now, that brings up an interesting thing because of a lot of observations have been done here lately, and sometimes they're showing like smoother galactic cores. There's fewer dwarf galaxies than what was previously predicted. That is something that I did find out here recently. So that's something that I wanted to point out when you guys started talking about that. Now, the thing about wave dark matter that I was wanting to bring up is it naturally smooths structure because of quantum pressure, which prevents tight clamping or clumping. Now, this solves some small scale structure problems. Now, with that being said, you move into what they refer to as axions in field oscillation or oscillations. This is a major candidate for like wave-like dark matter, where it's the axion. And you know much about axions, B?
I'm sorry, say again.
Do you know much about axions and field oscillations?
Well, what about them?
Well, I'm just asking, do you know much about them?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. So, like, a major candidate for wave-like dark matter is the axions. So, now, an axion is a hypothetical ultralight particle, or particles, I should say. They behave more like fields than classical particles. Now, oscillate coherently. That's what they need to do. They need to oscillate coherently, okay, and they have to do this across space. And that oscillation is basically what the wave is, basically. You know what I mean? Now, an entire galaxy could sit inside like a slow vibrating dark matter field. You know what I mean? An entire galaxy could basically fit right inside of it. And that's really what I was talking about. Like this, they're literally the size of an entire galaxy. That's how huge these waves are. So, is that getting a little bit too?
These are issues of scale. I think fractals are going to have to come into this eventually.
Well,
yeah, no.
It really does. It sticks right out in your face when it comes down to this stuff. Like, now cosmic scale interference is another thing that also sticks out to me whenever I get into this stuff, and I always keep hearing about it. Now
well, before you get into this, so you do understand, so whenever the most destructive power, the most destructive thing that we as a species through science have witnessed through some scientific instruments, and these scientists were just so gung-ho about this. I mean, it really got to the point to where I mean, they're trying to catalog black holes at these theorized places where these black holes are, and they're finding more and more evidence behind their math. And so they had an instrument that actually caught two black holes that were spiraling around each other, actually colliding.
Mhm.
These two black holes colliding is said to have, a force of millions and millions of stars exploding. Okay, bigger than
Possibly.
any supernova you could ever possibly would think. We're talking blinking out a quarter of a galaxy, sort of a thing. But that got caught on the instruments of two black holes from a distant galaxy, and that's kind of how we have, a lot of this extra information, and which is why they wanted to create CERN, so they can reproduce that, because of all the rare particles that are supposed to come off of it. Now, several particles have been found. Okay, many um, uh, 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 many like elementals, like we could actually create new elements.
Mhm.
They only last, fractions, millionths of a second, billions of a second, and they will still call it an element, even though it doesn't actually exist. So, any sustaining way in real life, but they have their own metrics for it. However, but yeah, all these different particles, they want to find the God particles so they can have the unified theory of everything, and which they say is their ultimate goal, which I do believe them. But at the same time, there's other stuff coming out of these quote unquote experiments that they're doing when they're destroying these atoms and breaking down literally the fabric of reality. So now
Yeah.
imagine doing that when we're overlayered on top of something else in a different dimension. Maybe something similar is going on the other side. And then you create a rip and tear that could destroy all of existence. Boom.
Well, see, I mean, I've
There you
actually
go.
brought this up, and a lot of people, especially Mark Everly, he thinks I'm crazy for mentioning that kind of stuff.
Well, I mean, the last part is potential. I'm not really saying it's going to happen.
It's really
It's
intense.
potential.
It's really intense, but it could be likely. I've mentioned this too. Okay, like if you take a look at what's taken place since CERN finally went online and became fully functional, okay, you can't tell me that something hasn't changed dramatically when it comes to the fabrics of reality. You know, things aren't the same as what they used to be. I don't care who freaking says it. Just things don't seem right.
They're not. The stairs are steeper. I don't have the energy I used to have. Things are heavier now. And the world used to be full of old people. Now it's full of young people. Okay, this is not good. Any changes for the worse. The further back you go, the better it was. I remember 20 years ago, man, I had stamina. It's amazing. No, things are changing, Raj. I think you're onto something there. I will point out that black holes are a theory, and we do have other explanations for the things we observe. And one of the interesting things is there's a guy named Halton Arp, unfortunately not with us anymore. He was a astronomer who was basically forced out of the United States for his views. He had to go to Germany, where he was at the Max Planck Institute. So, I mean, he wasn't a lightweight. And he pointed out something. He had a theory. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Hubble constant. Basically, it has to do with the idea that you can measure the speed at which a celestial object is moving away from us and its distance by measuring its redshift. And this is a very old astronomical tool we've used a long time. It's the Doppler effect, basically. And if you look at a celestial object at rest in relation to us and compare it to one in motion in relation to us, it'll shift either red or blue, depending on if it's moving away from us, it'll shift red. And they've come up with a way to determine, based on how far an object is redshifted, to determine how distant it is. Now, Alton R points out that there is evidence that some objects' light can have an intrinsic redshift. In other words, a redshift not related to its distance from the observer. This results in mismeasurements, and so when you see a highly energetic object and your Doppler measurements tell you that it is orders of magnitude further away, like this is at the edge of the universe. Well, no, not necessarily. It might be a lot closer. One of the problems with these super energetic things is, like, you see an object like blinking. Your measurements say that it's like so many trillion light years away, which means that the energy it's giving off to do this has to be the energy equivalent of an entire galaxy. Okay, now, how does it turn on and off all at the same time? If something is like, a couple 100,000 light years across, have that much energy, you can't have simultaneity. And to get something that's small, well, in the, it's just, you can't squeeze that much energy very easily unless you go through all kinds of wacky mathematical, like, loop-de-loops. However, if you take into account an intrinsic redshift, suddenly the object is a lot less energetic, is a lot closer, and is not what we thought it was. So a lot of assumptions might very well be made due to this miscalculation. And, what's a black hole? It's an X-ray source, basically. A lot of things make X-rays in the universe, Right. But, and I do have problems with the idea that you have a place where the laws of physics don't work anymore. I mean, I was taught, uniformitarianism. The laws of physics that operate now operate the same way everywhere and every time in the universe. That makes a lot of sense to me. So when you're saying, well, we've got this thing called a singularity, and it's very singular, where if you take the numbers, you get, things that are like square roots of negative numbers and things like that. These don't exist in reality. It's symmetrical. It's very elegant, but it's not necessarily the real world. I mean, you can demonstrate mathematically that bumblebees cannot fly as well. So these are just models, and a model doesn't necessarily reflect everything in the universe around us. So that's why I'm skeptical of black holes. I like being a rebel.
Well, black holes are the only things in the universe, as far as I know, that
I know
radiation.
I know you really are into those holes.
For me,
see,
it's like,
look at that. Otto, keep it clean. Otto.
See what
yourself, Otto.
Now, what it comes down to me on this is, like, if dark matter is wave-like, then density patterns can interfere. Okay, so galaxies might have, like, subtle rippling gravitational structures. Now, there may also be what they call silicon cores, which is stable wave packets, and that would be at the galactic centers of galaxies. Now, these aren't metaphorical waves either. They're solutions to quantum field equations. You can find those out very easily. Now
the gravitational forces at a macro level holding entire galaxies together, I believe that's a bit of a different game.
Well, it does actually fit into
I mean, of course it has to, but the laws are totally different.
Otto mentioned elegance, you know what I mean, and like I was mentioning before with Mark Edward, if you go into computer science and you start looking at complexity and symmetry and elegance, you start figuring out that the word elegance actually means quite a bit. Okay, and even in science, the word elegance means something. You know what I mean? Something that's elegant. It's really interesting. So like right here, that was the reason why I brought that up when it comes to this stable wave packets. It's, you know, it doesn't have to be something that's short and simple and easy to understand, as long as it freaking makes sense. You know what I mean? So that's something that I did want to point out. Now, when it comes to observation alone, I want to also point out that we don't yet know if dark matter is wave-like. I've been bringing that up, but we don't know for sure. Now, the current situation, there's no direct detection of dark matter particles. There's no confirmed detection of axions. There's no observational hints that are suggested, but they're also not conclusive. You know what I mean? They suggest it, but they're not conclusive. A lot of this is really just mathematical equations. Like they really don't know if black holes exist on a physical.
But if dark matter exists, then dark energy should exist too, right? Matter and energy interchange. Yeah, equals mc squared. So where's that dark energy? That sounds like something we should tap.
Well, this is all just mathematical theory, you know what I mean? And I've mentioned this before too, in a lot of, like, when it comes to like the human brain and the gray matter that's within the human brain.
Right.
Know? The only reason why they don't want to use that for this kind of research is because this is biological. Okay, and they consider everything that's biological, they consider localized.
Right.
Okay, so instead of doing research on stuff that's localized, they want something that's universal, and they believe that doing mathematical equations on something that they can't see or they can't frickin' prove exists other than mathematics is universal. So it's very interesting how all that plays out. I don't really like the idea that they consider things that are biological as being localized.
Right.
I really don't. I don't agree with that at all. What's your take on all that, V and Mark Edwards?
Well, we haven't heard anything from his lordship.
I know he's
Sir Edworthy.
Too much information, too late in the day.
Poor Mark.
Yeah.
Ganged up on by a bunch of colonists. Colonials.
Now, see, with my point of view, if it's true, the universe would be permeated by like a coherent oscillating field.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It would be structure formation where it becomes like a quantum phenomenon. And that would be at galactic scales. This wouldn't be like something that would be within the solar system or anything. It would actually be at a galactic level, you know. So doing all this research on black holes and stuff like that's cool and everything, but it's not even close to the level that I'm talking about. You know what I mean? I'm talking about way bigger than that. It'd be at a galactic level. So that's what I've really started finding out when it comes to a lot of this. So
cool to make a black hole.
So I mean, because the way I look at it is like conceptually, what I see it as is light is origin. You know what I mean? And I also believe that rays do influence reality. Now I've mentioned stuff about the cosmic egg before, and a lot of people have different theories about it. Like, there's a lot of people who believe that there's a whole network of nexuses that are set up all over freaking the cosmos, and that these nexuses twine with one another, and they transfer information and data.
Yeah, the webway,
Yeah,
the Black Library.
you know, the cosmic
Yeah.
the cosmic weave is what it's referred to.
Oh, don't tell a black woman that. She was like, how much that costs? Anyways.
For in this way, you would think of it as like cosmic egg's birthing structure. The Buddhists call it the Axis Mundi. You know,
Axis of the world.
yeah. So like for me, I think that all of this stuff is interesting because it suggests like the unseen majority of the universe, and that how it's not granular dust. You hear a lot of people who mention that, where it's supposed to be granular dust, and I don't really feel that way. I think it's a silent oscillating field that shapes everything gravitationally.
Why can't it be both?
Well, I just don't really like people who say it's a granular dust. I think.
Well, I mean, have you ever seen? And I love these videos of these college professors that have a metal plate, right? And they'll put sand in the middle of that metal plate, and they'll take like a string or something, and they'll rub it on an edge of the plate, and depending on where that string is, and it will add a finger or two somewhere along the plate, depending on where these objects are. It creates a different. The whole plate vibrates, and it creates different shapes for every position.
The sand takes the shape of the waves. Yeah, so you can see them in the sand.
So you can actually see them.
Yeah.
Well, I really enjoy that when it comes to like audio visualization. When you,
I've seen them do that with water too. Have you
Yeah.
seen that, where you like can have water come out of a hose, and with the right sound, it changes the direction of the water as well. So yeah, maybe it's like a 1-2 punch.
well,
You know,
I mean,
that gets to that quantum physics thing too, about like consciousness and materiality are inexorably intertwined. You can't have consciousness without physicality, and you can't have physicality without consciousness.
well, I mean, you know, granular dust is one thing, but why can't we see it as like a hidden ocean under visible stars too? You know what I mean? Like a hidden ocean that nobody can see, and it's under freaking the stars. It's stuff that's unseen. You know.
The Secret Ocean, I like that. That'd be a good name for a band. Secret Ocean. But we're stuck with hairy pranksters, I guess.
Man, I'm going to go ahead and end this now. It's
Oh yeah, it's getting late.
it's getting late now. It's 12:30 my time. It's 12 probably 1:30 your time. Do you guys want to hold off on doing headlines after midnight until next week, or?
I
I'm
gotta
kinda
think about
pooped.
crashing. Yeah, I gotta get up early to go over do my cat sitting job before the snow hits. I gotta go make sure little Thomas Kitty's got his food and he needs to play and be petted. I hang out with him for a few
In other
hours.
words, the man's got to go get some pussy. So
I gotta go. He's a
him.
good boy, little Thomas Kitty. I'll send you guys some pictures. He is such a
Please
good
do.
cat.
Poor Mark Edward, he looks like he's ready to fall asleep too. Like he's
You
just
do look tired, dude. Yeah.
and we appreciate you being here with us, man. And someday we will talk about something that is computer worthy, and it's not all about this scientific crap. That
Okay.
Well, we talked a little bit about AI today.
Topic.
We did some AI. We tapped Mark's brain a little bit. We were talking a bit about the AI market and the bubble bursting, and Just like that. Maybe we'll do a more tech-oriented show next week. We'll see. We'll see what Bob wants to do.
Well, I mean,
I love saying that now. Yeah, we'll see what Bob wants to do.
On the third thing,
What about Bob?
Yeah.
on the third
Exactly.
thing, I wanted to bring up the Vocaloid thing, but it just seems like nobody is into that no more. And like, there is a lot of interesting stuff that came out of that, and nobody even cares about. You know, and especially
That was so last year, Roger.
well, it was so last decade. You know what I mean? It was like
Yeah.
I remember when they did the little Japanese concert where the animated girl came up out of the freaking thing and did an entire concert. I thought that was cool as shit. Now it's just like old hat, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was just so freaking 20 years ago, Uncle Roger. They're just not so cool anymore, you know what I mean? Are you kidding me, dude? They made a virtual freaking singer in a live concert. That's amazing. I don't care what generation it is. That's just cool as heck.
It is. There's a lot of cool stuff out there, man.
So old, Uncle Roger.
Yeah, I know.
I'm the oldest guy in the room now. Now that Bob is left. She has one, I think it was a year and a fortnight or something on me. I keep trying to catch up, but she.
Don't try to catch up. Just stick with it and do the next right thing, and you should be fine. So
You are correct, Roger. You are correct.
So before we end this, let's go around the room, get everybody's socials, let everybody figure out how to get in touch with you. First, we'll start with Mark, since he's so easy.
Yeah, simple. Minds.com under the username Medworthy.
Okay. How about you? How about you, Otto?
Well, you can check out my website at navakavada.org. That's NAVAKAVADA. It's spelled just like it sounds. Check me out on minds.com at AutoX or Auto Excelsior. I forget which, but I'm probably one or the other.
Both.
Of course, I'm at Rogers Hangout, and Messenger Pigeon will sometimes reach me, and or you might run into me at the store down the corner.
Okay, how about you, B? How can people find you?
Yeah, you can catch me out with your. Never mind. No, I'm just hanging out in your basement somewhere in any town, America. You know,
An undisclosed location.
have some potato chips, just reclining feet up on the desk, just
If you guys need to get in touch with B, you can find him at my Rogers Hangout on Teams. Come in and check me out on Teams or on Element Matrix at Rogers Hangout. I'm also
They're actually housemates. They have an apartment in Key West.
you can catch me. I'm gonna be around the way, on the flip side. And yeah.
Now, all of us are pretty active on Teams, so if you come into my community, which is Rogers Hangout on my community, you can pretty much contact and talk to any of us, so everybody's welcome. Just find us there. You can also find me on X at Roger Hansen, or Roger Hansen at ROGLOL1973, as well as on Minds at
that X is a bad habit.
Yeah, I know.
You should get off that X, man.
So, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and end the recording before things get a little bit out of hand.
It's not a freaky rave, man. Get off your X, bro.